I need a second. I'm gonna try to get it on my Facebook.
You're live.
Well, here we are again, another exciting holiday edition here with Wine Access and Haute Living for our special holiday with the one of 53 Masters of Wine, my dear friend Vanessa Conlin. Tonight, we're going to take you through a little journey of some special products that she has picked to make your holidays a little bit more fun. Hey, Vanessa, great seeing you.
Great seeing you too. I feel like we're sort of reversed in our attire because you're in Miami and you look very sort of sweatered up, and I'm in Napa, which is actually very cold right now, and I feel like I look more Miami today with my kind of tropical look. But
it's amazing to be back with you again, and I can't believe that the year's, it's almost coming to an end, and we're pulling up to the holidays soon. And, with everything and wrapping up for the year, a lot of times people forget and they need an amazing solution for gifting. And I can't think of anything that brings more cheer in the holidays than some great wine with your family.
I know, I couldn't agree more. And yes, I mean, I had to kind of pinch myself yesterday when I realized it was December 15th. I mean, we're almost the end of Hanukkah, a couple, just 10 days out as of yesterday from Christmas. So lots of holidays already in play or about to happen. And I think exactly to your point, there's nothing like wine as a holiday gift. And I do want to say, and you know this better than anyone, because we've done so many of these sort of virtual tastings now, that even though we have smaller gatherings or we're gathering via Zoom, it doesn't mean you can't still share great bottles of wine together, even if it's virtually.
100%, and champagne.
So, and champagne, always
special,
champagne.
Treats for us tonight.
Speaking of, I think it's time to have a little toast. Couldn't start this without cheers.
Cheers. So I'm excited to try this for the first time.
Yes. Cheers, Kamal. Great to see you. And to Haute Living. So wonderful to be back here with you. So thank you.
For our Wine Access family.
So I know that we're going to talk about a little bit about pairings today, about gifts, about pairings. And I thought I'd just kind of start off with a general, just a couple points about food and wine pairing. And the first thing I wanted to mention was that it's meant to be fun. And ultimately, no pairing is going to make you like a wine that you don't like. So the most important thing is to drink what you like. And there really are no rules. There are some things that we have sort of generally accepted to work well together, but ultimately, it's your wallet, it's your palate. And so I just really encourage people to try to experiment and have fun. But I thought I would start with a couple pairing myths and truths, if we could just have sort of, a little bit, it's sort of like a game.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll ask you, is this a myth or a truth that you have to pair red wine with steak?
I would say it's a truth for me personally, because I see even the different types of wine and how it affects me in the taste in steak. So for me, I'm definitely voting for that's a truth. And how about you?
So it's sort of a trick question, because it works well, of course, with steak, red wine, particularly something, higher in tannins, like I think we all talk about Napa Cab and steak working really, beautifully, harmoniously together. And that's true because tannins, which, come from the skins of red varieties, gives red wine its color, but also that kind of structure and that tactile sensation of your mouth being a little bit dry. If you feel that feeling when you drink a big, powerful red wine. It's the same thing with a steak. So it's when your mouth feels dry, it's because the tannins are actually attaching to the proteins on your tongue. And it's the same thing with a steak, let's say, where it can sort of cut through that protein. And then they have this love affair together where the tannins kind of soften the protein and the protein softens the tannin. So it is a truth, but it's also a myth that you have to pair red wine with steak. So particularly like a really well marbled, something with a lot of fat to it, works really well with something like a Chardonnay, like a white Burgundy.
I agree with that. What I found actually, too, on the flip side, as I've been eating a lot less red meat, and trying beyond and impossible. I don't know if you find if it's a myth or truth, but I find that the red wine for me, even with the beyond and impossible, pairs better.
Mm. Honestly, those would fool me any day. I don't eat a lot of red meat either, but those I do enjoy those. So
So I've been,
it's kind it's kind of both. It's a myth and a truth. So okay, so here's my next question. Is this a myth or a truth that you have to pair white wine with fish?
I would say that's a myth because I love burgundies, to have something light with a beautiful fish, or red burgundy, that is,
Mhm.
with it. So, and also with sushi, I've been able to fall in love with certain wines paired with my sushi. So I would definitely go with myth. And you?
Agree. It's a myth. You can pair red wine with fish. In fact, I know that you and I were lucky enough to have a conversation with a pretty famous chef
Yeah, one of the
who
best.
one of the best. You can say his or her name if you would
Oh,
like to. um, and who chooses red burgundy pretty routinely with seafood. So it's a myth. Now that being said, are you going to want to go super tannic with the red wine? Probably not, but certainly, like you said, a red burgundy would pair beautifully. I love red burgundy and salmon. It's
Yeah.
outstanding. Okay, so what about this one? I feel like you're gonna crush this. Champagne is only for celebrations.
I would say that's a big myth.
Definitely.
Is for, I would say, almost every occasion.
I agree. I agree. It's for, it's for breakfast. No, it's of course I love it's so celebratory and there's something so romantic about, popping a cork of champagne, but it certainly does not have to be reserved for celebrations. In fact, just open it and it is a celebration. But it's also, as we'll talk about with some of these pairings, it's incredibly food friendly and very diverse in terms of what it can pair with. So definitely not reserved for weddings and the like. So last one, there's a phrase, you tell me if this is a myth or a truth. If it grows together, it goes together.
I would say that's a myth. There's so many combinations and hybrids and things to explore out there that, and I believe you're referencing blends and
So actually thinking more like foods and wine. So like if it grows together, like the same place where the wine is grown, and maybe it's a type of plant or something that's cultivated there, do those things go together or not?
I would say that's a myth, but it's a great concept too. I do love thinking of everything from the earth nearby each other, but I can
Hmm.
see globally in one area having a certain terroir specific that makes that super great. And their vegetables may not be as, on the same level. So I would definitely say myth.
So that was kind of a trick one too. So it's kind of both. So there is some truth to that if you think of something like in the Loire Valley at Sancerre, which is of course Sauvignon Blanc, and the goat cheese that is very famous for the region. Like those go so well together. Or if you think of something like Sangiovese, from Italy, and tomato-based dishes, they both have fairly high acidity and those go together. But it's also true that you don't have to stick to those traditional pairings. And in fact, we have sparkling, white, red, and we actually have a fortified wine, but we could have easily thrown a sake in here and paired it just as easily with any of these dishes, that none of which are sushi. So you can it has some basis in truth, but you can also throw that all out the window.
As you said, there are no rules.
There are no rules. No. Exactly. So, wow. I'm a sucker for champagne. So this is the M. Brugnon. This is a Brut from Écoy, which is the Premier Cru village in Montagne de Reims. And this is your first time trying this wine?
It is. It is.
Okay. So it's kind of a fun story, and then I'd love to talk pairings with this too. But this is a grower. So in Champagne, a lot of producers or a lot of growers just grow grapes and then sell them to some of the champagne houses. So you don't actually have to make champagne. to be a grower there. And on the flip side, you can be a producer, a winery that produces champagne and really not grow any grapes, and you could just buy from these growers. So this is a both. So he grows his own grapes. He and his wife Ella and Valerie Brugnon, it's their name on the label. So they grow fruit for some of these big houses like Krug, Dom Perignon, so they sell some of it, but then they keep some back for their own production. And so that's exactly what we're tasting here today. I love this. So it's 65% Chardonnay and 35% Pinot Noir. And I think those together it's like the perfect balance, where for me, the Chardonnay, you get this kind of like really laser like focus, like really bright acidity, but then that Pinot Noir adds a little bit sort of like lushness, on the texture. And for me, just like very focused and elegant.
Very, very impressive.
And this one happens to be, so we chose a bit of a variety of price points. So this is $35.
Wow.
Which for champagne of this quality, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable, but we import this ourselves. We are the exclusive importer of this into the United States at Wine Access. So we're essentially able to cut out a lot of the middlemen and just bring it to you what we think is a really outstanding price. So what do you like to pair champagne with?
I love it with sushi for sure, but one of the things I was actually going to talk to you, referencing myth and so forth, I actually like champagne for breakfast. And
yes.
So some of my favorites have been eggs with caviar and some champagne, and so I believe champagne could be drank at any time of the day. And I definitely enjoy sushi and champagne. I think it's a great pairing, especially with the right type of omakase, where the different flavors are going in the champagne. Right. And what I really am impressed about this is that being and gone to Champagne and drinking a lot of champagne, besides the value, is the quality of this product, which drinks like $150 bottle. It's one thing, obviously, get a great value, but when you get a product at that level, whoever's enjoying it, you can really, taste the craftsmanship, like what you're saying, where they grow their own grapes. Besides doing the third party business, they curate their own, smaller batch and so forth. So you can feel the sort of attention to detail and love in it.
Exactly. And they actually, so this was made in a way sort of specifically for Wine Access, because I was there. This is, I think, two and a half years ago, and with my CEO, Joe, and we met with them. We were kind of on this mission. We're like, we want to find sort of an under the radar producer, that doesn't have representation in the United States. And we just kept hearing this name over and over. And so we paid a visit to them. They don't have a tasting room. It's literally their home. So it's like their two cats running around and the two of them. And we tasted, several of their champagnes. And I said, I love these, but the dosage, meaning the sort of sweetness level that's determined at bottling, was just a little bit high for what I feel like are, the American palate, but also sort of our members' palates. And so I said, I love this, but could you do a special bottling? Could you do a custom dosage for us? And they did. So this is at 6 grams per liter. It's labeled brut. Technically that could be extra brut. So this is on the drier side, but has just like a little of that textural richness.
That's what I find beautiful. And then the dosage being lower and it's not as sugary or sweet. It's something that I could really enjoy throughout the day.
Totally.
It's just light and refreshing.
I mean, I knew there was a reason we were friends, Kamal, but same. I love champagne, any meal, without a meal. I also love this in place of dessert sometimes, because, at the end of a meal, sometimes you're like, oh, the last thing I want to do is kind of load up on something else that's like, sort of heavy or unctuous. And it's such a great way to cleanse your palate. But if I was going to pair it, there's sort of, I think, a number of ways you could go with this, because champagne has this really bright acidity. You can pair it with similarly, things with acidity, like the goat cheese, or you think about like a vinaigrette on a salad, that would go together. But you could also do the complete opposite, because this acidity, the brightness, the freshness can actually cut through kind of fattier foods or saltier foods or even oily food. So And salt and champagne love each other too. So some fun pairings, popcorn. Like I like to make a truffle popcorn with champagne. I love doing. You mentioned caviar. I love doing like a potato chip with creme fraiche and caviar with champagne. But I thought since it was holidays too, we're sort of on the tail end of Hanukkah, but potato latkes and champagne are beautiful because it has that kind of, again, that cut that kind of can cut through the richness and that the bit of like the oiliness of the latke. So good. And especially if you do like a little dollop of creme fraiche on it. So good.
Yeah, sounds unbelievable.
Now I'm really hungry. So, well, awesome. I love this. I'm definitely going to be enjoying the rest of this bottle.
Yeah.
Not necessarily on this call, but today. So next one, and I'm trying to recall if we've tasted any of the Massacan wines together.
I do not believe so.
I don't think so either. When we're gonna get through every wine one of these days that exists, but we're going through it a study clip, but we have not had these before. So this is a really fun story, and this is also what I think is incredible quality at a fairly reasonable price point. This is $30. So this is a white wine from Napa Valley. It's a blend of some grapes that probably everybody knows, like Chardonnay, but then also some indigenous Italian varieties like Ribolla Gialla and Friulano. And what's really cool about this is, so Dan Petrosky is the proprietor and the winemaker of this. It's a very, very small brand, but he's sort of more well-known for being the winemaker at Larkmead, which is of course a fairly well-known producer of primarily Napa Cabernet, some red blends, and Sauvignon Blanc as well, of course. But known for that. That's his like day job. And then like so many of these winemakers these days, they all have these sort of passion projects that they do on their own to stay fresh and engaged and excited. And that's exactly what Massacan is. And so it's his brand. It's only white wines. He's, I believe, still Massacan is the only producer of all white wines in Napa. And what he intends with these wines is really for them to be approachable in their youth. They're not meant to be put in your cellar for decades and decades. He wants you to open them, share them at the table, and be very food friendly. And I think that the Ania is such a great example of that. And the reason he's using those Italian varieties I mentioned, Ribolla Gialla and Friulano, is a lot of his early training as a winemaker was in Italy. So it's kind of combining his love of Napa, use of Chardonnay with these indigenous Italian varieties that he was around when he was still just basically an upstart in the wine business.
I will tell you, just to even touch about what you were saying, the fact that Wine Access, has the ability to meet with the vintners like that, and you have the ability of creating the dosage to your members' palate or to what, what the group is. It's, just another advantage of what I find that's amazing what you guys do, because obviously having the knowledge and educating us and, our readership and usership base, it's important, but to have the ability of actually crafting the product, it's super impressive. So my hat's off to you guys at Wine Access. And this is still thinking of the champagne as much as I love this white wine.
Thank you. Well, we're I say my job is really, it's all to serve the consumer, and so I just want to always bring things thank you, that surprises and delights people and exceeds their expectations. So I'm so glad to hear that you're enjoying it. So my family has a tradition around the holidays that we make cioppino, which is like a kind of Italian fisherman's stew. I can't remember, I'm not Italian for the record, but I think it translates to something like throw it all in, or everyone contributes, or bring, so because it's like a seafood stew, and you can have scallops or clams or mussels or king crab and all those things together. And so when I think of pairing that, I like to pair with like a crisp, high acid white wine. So the Ania is definitely going to be on my table this holiday. I think we're making it on Christmas Eve when we make the cioppino. But it's kind of a example of that. Sometimes things can pair off each other really nicely. in terms of like the acidity, because you have this kind of brightness from the broth and this acid from the wine. But it also, I don't know if you noticed, Kamal, like I feel like this wine has an amazing textural interest to it as well.
Agreed.
So it, you know, while it's crisp and fresh and bright and all that, it has this kind of really interesting sort of additional depth, right, of enjoyment, with this sort of just textural richness. So for me, I thought also that would pair nicely with the Cioppino, because you have all those different textures and this mix of kind of delicacy, but also like unctuousness in the Cioppino. So one of my faves.
We had a question from the audience, from Patrick. Acidity
Sure.
seems to be more present with low dosage champagne, which I find harder to digest. Do you think there's any correlation?
So there's absolutely a correlation with sort of acidity and dosage. So when we're thinking about, and just to back up for 1 second, so dosage is a mix of sugar and wine that's added at bottling. And it can be anywhere from 0 up to like very, very sweet. You know, most styles of champagne that we see on the market now are on the drier, what we would consider dry. But, you know, back in the day, like, the czars of Russia used to be major fans of champagne, and if we drank those champagnes today, they would be so sweet, like we would consider them a dessert wine. Yeah. So there's a huge range of styles, but you know, these days what we mostly drink is like commercially dry. But dosage is really, it can help sort of counter the acidity, because if you think about Champagne as a region, where it's sort of the northernmost ability to ripen grapes, it's a very cool climate there, and so the wines are naturally, you know, very high in acidity. And what dosage can do is sort of balance that out. So a lower dosage wine, definitely the acidity is going to feel more present. What I would say is that it doesn't necessarily mean that there's lower acid in wines that have a higher dosage, but the dosage will sort of like marry with the acidity and kind of almost, I don't want to say mask it, but will help sort of balance that acidity. So Patrick is right about the acidity and dosage correlation, for sure.
So yeah, and looking forward to trying to Cipollino one day myself.
Well, we'll share it together. Yes, yeah. When we can, I'll come. I have to say, like, usually my mother has the bigger hand in making it, but I'm not terrible, so I'll do my best. So okay, well, those are we had champagne, we had white wine. Now we have a number of, well, we have 2 red wines to taste also. The first of which is the Julianas, so the Perrault et Fille. So this is a Beaujolais. I should mention to you before we move on, or as we're moving on, just one more thing about the Massacan wines is they're such a darling of sommeliers. So you know, obviously times are a little bit different right now with COVID, but if we were to be in New York right now and basically go to any Michelin starred restaurant in New York City, Massacan is on the list. It's almost like, you know, I used to live in New York, and it would be this sort of joke, but it was true, was that I would like open up a menu and I'm like, okay, if it's a fine dining, like a Michelin, I'm like, what page is the Massacan on? I'd be like, there it is. So definitely prized by sommeliers, but also available on Wine Access. So this first red wine is Beaujolais, and I know your audience is very sophisticated, so this probably goes without saying, but there's Beaujolais Nouveau, which is so different than what we're tasting today, right? So there's Beaujolais Nouveau is kind of, you know, created, it's basically unaged red wine. It's released right after harvest, and it became kind of fun and trendy. It's like, you know, you drink it right away, it's fresh. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum is what we're tasting today, which is what we call a cru Beaujolais, which is the top of the pyramid of quality. And so I just wanted to dispel that for maybe anyone who just hasn't had Beaujolais in a while. This is not as a simple bistro wine. This is actually like made in quite a serious fashion. But we are in Beaujolais, so we're at the southern end of Burgundy, and the grape is Gamay. And in terms of the quality pyramid, you can talk about sort of Beaujolais, which is sort of the broader region, kind of the, wines made from mostly the flatter regions within the appellation. There's Beaujolais Village, which is a step up in the quality pyramid, which is made from a smaller, sort of more delineated region, which is mostly in the north and on higher slopes. And then there's what we call the crus, of which there are 10. And this is one of them. So Juliana is the name of the cru or the commune where it's grown. And this is considered, one of the highest quality from the region. It was the first cru created, and it actually Julianas is named for Julius Caesar.
Wow.
So this is also this wine is also loved by sommeliers, which doesn't mean you have to be a sommelier to enjoy it, but the reason they do is it's very versatile with food.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it has this like gorgeous perfumed nose, tons of like mixed berry fruit. There's a real floral note. I don't know if you're picking that up, but kind of like rose petal, violet, just really, really enticing. And then I've been chattering this whole time, I should taste it, but has like sort of present tannins, but they're sort of voluptuous and supple.
Supple. Wow, very beautiful.
And this is also, if you're looking to kind of stick on the more value side, this is $25.
Wow.
I think it's a great way to drink really beautifully at an under 30 price point. You know what, we're past this now, but Beaujolais is so great with Thanksgiving. It's a great leveler of everything at the table. Because if you're doing a traditional Thanksgiving, I should say, it's so hard to pair because you've got all these different flavors on the same table. Normally if you're having you go to a restaurant, you order like one composed dish, they've thought about how everything works together, and then Thanksgiving, you've got, it's sweet potatoes with like marshmallows on them, and then you've got cranberry sauce, and you have turkey, and you've got someone made their prime rib, and you've got Brussels sprouts. You've got all these different flavors, sweet, salty, umami, savory, bitter, and it's so hard to pair. So I think Beaujolais always does such a great job of being able to, it doesn't overpower sort of the lighter flavors on the table, but it's enough to stand up to something like, the dark meat of turkey, or even leaning into something like lamb if you have that on your table.
And I love how ready to drink it is just from opening. It's just ready to go.
Absolutely.
About these Beaujolais, and now seeing it at this level.
So do you have a long list of people that you're buying gifts for? I shouldn't say have to buy gifts for, that you want to buy gifts for.
Yeah, I enjoy in gifting. So yeah, and to me, just part of our community and lifestyle, we are all our friends, we share wine with each other, and we've had so many great moments. But as you said earlier, the fact that you could still get on a Zoom and communicate with your friends and have a party in your own home and while they're at their home, that's becoming more and more prevalent, and it's actually a lot of fun. And being able to explore and learn and break out of what we traditionally are used to. And what I love about Wine Access, it takes the guessing out of the game. Because with the wine market, as you know, that people are buying grapes, they may not, they're from this one, it's a branding deal. It's that, and you guys go and visit the people and the actual story and understanding the craftsmanship behind the wine. And one of the things that I proudly say, I've not gotten one bad bottle from Wine Access, not one bad recommendation. And everything that has been so well priced has drank at what you would pay in the, even these $35 bottles are drinking like what you would pay $200 in a restaurant, if not more, and so forth, or even in a liquor store. So it's amazing by identifying the right product and just the right, maker, that how you cut out 90% of the margin of error. So thank you guys for doing such a great job and having such a, curated selection.
Oh, no, thanks for saying so. And I mean, we take this very seriously. We taste every single thing that we offer, so it's always our own tasting notes, our own personal stamp of endorsement on it. Our goal is really to, again, over deliver for price to quality. So we take it very seriously. So
well, you guys
thank you.
do an amazing job. So, you're batting 100 with me. So I'm,
Thanks, Kamal.
But you guys are phenomenal.
You know what can be fun too this holiday season? I know it's sometimes hard to pick out gifts for people, or particularly if you don't know their wine taste. So we do have gift cards too. So if you're struggling to figure out what to buy the wine lover in your life, but you don't exactly know what their preferences are, you can always gift a gift card.
Yeah, and one of the things I did is I'm a big fan of your wine club and that whole concept of you guys getting limited bottles and your other, the wine club. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. No, I'd love to. Thank you. Yeah, wine clubs, it's also a great gift to someone else or to yourself, honestly, particularly if you're a busy person and you don't want to have to necessarily, spend a whole lot of time thinking about a curated selection. We actually have 3 different tiers of club depending on kind of how much you want to spend, but each tier, it's Discovery Club, Connoisseurs Club, and Collectors Club. Each is curated by us. It has usually a theme. So for instance, this Q4 for the Discovery Club was all about holiday pairings, but we've done things like, winemaking techniques or up and coming producers that you need to know. So it's really something that we put a lot of thought into. And Wine Club also gets, members get 10% off anything else that they want to purchase at Wine Access, year round. And we make videos as well, which are a lot of fun. I usually, it's a lot of wine to taste in a day, so they can get a little interesting towards the end. But but if you're the type of person who likes to kind of taste along or a more sort of visual instead of reading, we release videos along with the written descriptors, of course, so you can taste along with us at home.
And what's amazing about that gift, as you said, if it's for yourself, it takes, the thinking out and worrying about what to choose. And I also find as business gifts, it always keeps people on their mind,
Yes.
because they keep on getting it in a few months. When you're not thinking about it, they're not thinking about it. And even for your friends and family, whoever you're sending it to, it's just a nice surprise. And it at times reconnects you with them when you reach out. And it's always a beautiful surprise to get a package from Wine Access and in your box, and get to open and see some beauties.
Thank you. No, I think that's a great point. You're like, oh, wow, I get to hear from this person again. It's so nice. I'm getting another gift. So no, I think that's an excellent point. So I'm a huge fan of Syrah, which this is. I'm actually going to drink my Syrah in a Burgundy glass, which is just my choice, but I like to drink certain non-Burgundy varieties from Burgundy glasses like Syrah. I also like Nebbiolo from a Burgundy glass. I just think it really accentuates the perfumes, the aromatics of it. So I don't know about you, Kamal, but I know so many people who love Cabernet Sauvignon and aren't as familiar with Syrah. And it's interesting because sometimes you will hear these descriptors and what people are saying they like about Cabernet. And I'm like, well, you're kind of describing Syrah. You should really try it. You should really branch out. So this is Syrah from Carneros, so just south in Napa Valley. And this is from one of the most famous growers in all of Napa. So it's called the Larry Hyde Vineyard Syrah. 2016 is the vintage. But Larry is also, he's probably most known for being a grower of really, really high quality grapes that a lot of these coveted producers buy, like Kistler, a couple names we might have heard of. Kistler, Paul Hobbs, Aubert, Consgard, Ramey, Dumal. So extremely sought after coveted vineyard sources. But this is his own bottling. I believe that the 2016 might have been the first vintage that he actually bottled of his own Syrah. But this is $60. And I just find, one of the things I love about Syrah is really the nose. So much of the enjoyment of wine is, of course, it's the taste, but I just think it's fascinating because it has this sort of really intriguing mix of like fruit and non-fruit. So I definitely get sort of like blackberry, black cherry, blueberry, but then there's this kind of really smoky quality to it as well. Very floral, really kind of like a crushed violet petal note to it. And then also this kind of dried herb note. So I get this mix of kind of dried like rosemary, thyme, fennel, It's almost like a spice rub you would like put on a roast
Yeah.
before you put it in the oven. Um, and I like to pair this. So when I think about a sort of traditional holiday pairing, I know several of my friends like to make lamb or lamb asabuco. And Syrah and lamb is a great
Wow.
mix because lamb has, a little bit of that gaminess to it, almost sometimes like a smokiness, and I think it pairs really beautifully with this variety.
I want to ask you, do you think there's any wine that pairs better with spicy food? You
Yes,
mentioned lamb, start getting me thinking
yes,
about Indian food.
it's such a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. Yes, and particularly like if we're talking about spicy in terms of heat, like actual, spice. You want a wine that has a good amount of like fruitiness to it, or as you get even spicier in terms of heat, that actually has a little bit of residual sugar to balance that out. So when I think of Indian food, or if some of these spicier Thai or Vietnamese dishes, something like Alsatian, Gewürztraminer or Riesling or Muscat. It doesn't have to be from Alsace, but those happen to just have a great textural weight to them as well that can balance the spice. But definitely you want to have something with either fruit, at least fruitiness, but ideally it doesn't have to be like very very sweet, but at least a little bit of residual sugar to balance, to kind of tame it. And I'll say again, there are no rules. You drink what you want, and pair it as you want. But something that can happen with spicy food is if you pair it, for instance, with something very high in acidity and bone dry, like let's say a Sauvignon Blanc, let's say like a Sancerre, it can actually accentuate, that pairing can accentuate the spiciness and almost make the wine taste a little metallic.
Oh, wow.
So my recommendation, would be a great, like, Mosel Cabernet Riesling, or sweeter, or these Alsatian, or something from right here in our backyard, in Napa Valley, like a Riesling, would be great with that. Great question.
Syrah is beautiful.
I love this. I'm so glad you like it. Yes, I'm sort of on this, feel like, if Syrah had a cheerleader, it would be me.
I understand what you're saying as far as like, having certain elements of loving in Cabernet, and I'm guilty of being that person of what you're saying. And
Yeah.
I haven't explored enough in the Syrah world.
It's totally natural. I mean, we gravitate towards things that we know and love, and that's totally fine. But sometimes it's also good to challenge our boundaries a little bit. So I know for sure we've never tasted a fortified wine together. So I'm pretty excited about the next wine. So this is a tawny port. So this is called the Quinta de la Rosa. It's a 30-year-old tawny. So we're talking fortified wine from the Douro, in Portugal. And this is a commemorative bottling, this particular bottle, that commemorates when they first started producing their own. So when we talk about kind of going back to right where we started at the beginning of the conversation, when we were talking about champagne, there are some people who just grow grapes and sell grapes. Some people only make wine and buy all their grapes, and then there's this in between where you maybe grow your grapes and you make your own wine. And this is an example of that. So this producer for many years was selling their grapes to kind of more famous, bigger name port producers like Sandemans and Croft. And then in 1988, which is why it's marked here at the bottom of the bottle, they started saving some of their fruit, keeping some of this fruit that they would sell, and making their own port. So this is what we call a tawny port with an indication of age. So you can see, obviously the color is tawny. And the thing to know about tawny ports, what we call an indication of age, if it just says 30 year, it doesn't actually mean that this is a vintage 30 years old. It means it's the average age of all of the wine in this bottle is 30 years. So it could have wine that's 40 years, or that's a little younger, but it's on average has been blended to be an average age of 30 years old. And so, that smells so good. So when I say fortified wine, so this actually has spirit added. So again, I know your audience is super knowledgeable about wine, so this is probably old hat to everyone. But in Portugal, in the production of port, the fermentation is arrested or stopped very early on. So the traditionally these grapes were tread by foot. There are machines now that mimic that, but the point was it's a very gentle process. So they're trying to sort of gently sort of crush the fruit, start to extract some of the tannins. And then before the wine has fermented to dryness, spirit is added. So it's a neutral grape spirit. It's at 77% ABV. And then, so the wine is fortified up into ports, around 20%. This one happens to be 19.5% ABV, but it stops the fermentation in its tracks because yeast, which, cliff note fermentation, right, is of course yeast consumes sugars in the grapes and the byproduct is alcohol and CO2. But if you stop those yeast in its tracks before it's consumed all the sugar, you'll actually have a wine that has actual residual sweetness to it. So this is both sweet and fortified. So you get this kind of sweetness, but also this kind of like fiery, flair to it, kind of this headiness to it. And I don't know about you, I don't eat fruitcake, but I know that it's very popular this time of year. So I thought it could be a fun, if anyone out there is, fruitcake or being gifted a fruitcake. My mom had this, she had this theory that there's really only one fruitcake in the world and it just keeps being like regifted.
I'm with you.
But this actually, I think, would pair really well because, fruitcake usually has sort of this like, candied fruit note to it, and often some dried nuts. And this definitely has this like nuttiness to it. Rum cake would work as well, I think, as a pairing.
And for me, and if you don't have a cake, I would actually even use this in lieu of, because I replace my desserts with a port or with an additional glass of red wine. So if you don't have the cake, this will also suffice.
I'm the same. I often like to just drink my dessert instead.
Part of that.
Or pair it with a cigar.
100%. Especially out where you're at, that beautiful weather.
Yeah, no, I'm again, sitting here in Napa. It's a little cool, but hey, I can't complain. We don't have. I know the East Coast is getting hit with some pretty major snow, so I can't complain.
The Syrah is really drinking beautiful as well.
Did you have a favorite among the lineup today?
Definitely. I really enjoyed everything. My favorite was the Syrah.
So glad to hear that.
I could see why you're so passionate and cheerleading for it. And everything just opened and drank so well, which for me is also a key thing, because I've always been aging, decanting and certain wines. And now I realize, hey, you want to sit down, eat and enjoy, and this is perfect to eat. And coupled with the price point of being at home and going through a lot more wine than normal, I think these are drinking as $100 bottles all day, and like that. So the knowledge and your selection and choosing, it's amazing because you're really drinking world-class wines at a fraction of the price. And especially if you, as you mentioned, Michelin, if you're dining or entertaining at any of these places, what the markup and the premiums are. So in times like this, to be able to be at home and enjoy what would be $100, $200, $300 bottle for, under $40. And I guess if we order $120, the shipping is also included, and 6 bottles.
That's true. Yeah, $120 or 6 bottles, whatever comes first. Shipping, yes, shipping is included. So, and there's still time, if you haven't gifted yet, or you just want to drink really well yourself. So, and we do have, a variety of price points and styles on the site. So I had a couple I thought I would mention that we didn't taste today, that depending on your style or your price point, that you might want to try. So one is, I know we've talked about Ponte Canet before. is being one of our favorites, from Bordeaux, from Pauillac. It's a fifth growth, but one that definitely, punches above its weight. So we have it's for $299, vintage 2000.
Wow.
Which is pretty awesome to have a a Bordeaux with some cellar time on it already, so you don't have to worry about putting it away for a decade or more to enjoy it. You can definitely pop that and pour it. I would decant it, but pop it and pour it right away. Another favorite producer of mine is Dalla Valle, and one of their wines is called Colina. It's meant to be their more approachable. Again, you can age it, but don't need to. It's a 2016 vintage, and that's $100. So huge fan of that. We have a Napa Cab that's at a $45 cost called Hidden Ridge, which is pretty amazing. It's a 2017 vintage. So if you want to kind of stock up on a couple bottles or buy a case and just have it on hand, I love that one, just to kind of keep it handy for dinners and for every night, but also for a special occasion as well.
You mentioned the case discounts. As we're looking to stock up, and as it's seemingly that we're going to be at home a little bit longer, there's a lot of great additional value by buying by the case at Wine Access. So I'm blown away by the quality of the product, and then it just gets even better and better.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, and no, I mean, we're really excited about what we have on available on the website right now. I did want to at least mention one Pinot, because I know you and Deyvanshi are broadening your exploration of Pinot Noir, at least from the United States, and a great producer is Christum from the Willamette Valley in Oregon. So that's a $30 wine, 2019 vintage, one of my faves. And then I have to end with champagne, of course. I love the Brugnon, but if you want to, venture out to a vintage champagne, we do have the 2007 vintage of the Cuvée Louis, which is from Billecart-Simon, and that's $120.
Beautiful. Big fan of that as well.
Yeah.
You guys have an amazing lineup. And what would be the cutoff date if someone would like to have something by Christmas?
Well, we ship next day if you order from the store. So for us, I would just say out of our hands right now is carriers who, of course, get delayed. So I'd say for us, we can turn around the next day and ship it, however you choose. But I would caution just against things out of our hands, like the delays with everyone shipping. So I'd say, the sooner the better, just to be sure that that it doesn't get delayed by UPS or FedEx or one of the carriers this holiday season.
Or the weather. So all these storms brewing and stuff.
Or the weather. Great point. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm not looking at snow, but I know New York is.
So everyone out there listening, I would start getting ready to head over to wineaccess.com, get those orders in now, and make sure your Christmas and Hanukkah is that much more special.
Or New Year's.
And New Year's as well. It's right around the corner,
That's right. I know. Can't believe it. Yeah, and looking forward to welcoming a new year. I have to tell you.
Looking forward to 2021. But all of the collections were phenomenal that you made today.
Thank you, Kamal.
The price points are, mind blowing. And another thing to mention that I find very useful and impressive what Wine Access does is the way it's shipped, the temperature control on the wine. So you get it, it's not sitting in the trunk of a car from 10 places in the heat. It's still well kept and maintained. So my kudos to you guys, and hats off again to, really fine tuning and getting out the packaging, and outside of the branding, the functionality of being able to get your wine at the right temperature and then put it in your wine fridge. It makes a big difference. So thank you guys for that.
Of course. Yes. Provenance matters very much, of course. So yes, very important to us as well. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me, Kamal. Haute Living. It's such a pleasure to join you always. And, I love our virtual sessions. I look forward to in person, but in the meantime, I have a number of fantastic bottles open in front of me. So
I'm going to have a fun night ahead. I planned ahead, and I said I'm going to see some of my family. So I'm excited that we'll be able to all taste, and I have the notes so I could educate them on what I learned today. And that's another great part of Wine Access is the educational process, because as much as we do know, there's so much more to learn. And, you know, as you said, your Cliff Notes versions have been very helpful of guiding us through our wine journey. So I can't thank you enough for your dedication to your craft and being as great as you are at what you do. So it's an honor for us at Hope Living to be aligned with you and with Wine Access.
Oh,
We look forward to a massive 2021 together.
cheers to that. Where is my champagne? Yes.
Yeah, I'll go back.
I think I need a little refill for that, but yes, cheers. Yes. Thank you again to
Sure.
2020, to many, many years of friendship ahead.
Looking forward. Happy and
Cheers,
healthy.
Kamal. Thanks so much. Okay. Bye-bye.